2 submachine guns, more than 300 rounds of ammunition, a kilo of cocaine, and £143,000 in cash, all hidden behind a false wall in a London flat. That was the secret world of 25-year-old Terence O'Connor, a man who thought he could juggle drugs, money, and weapons without being caught. He was wrong. The case started with a bag. On April 21st, 2020, officers on surveillance duty watched O'Connor hand over what looked like a large bag of cash to another suspect. It didn't look like much at first glance, but that exchange triggered the chain of events that would bring his entire operation crashing down. 9 days later, April 30th, Edgware, North London. O'Connor sat in a parked car, boot open, moving items around. Officers watching him decided it was time to move in. Unmarked cars pulled up. Detectives got out, and when they searched the black rucksack by his feet, they found it stuffed with cocaine. Wholesale value, around £36,000. Right there, O'Connor tried to distance himself. His words were simple. "I've never seen that before." But he also had an EncroChat phone on him, the same encrypted device used by organised criminals to hide their business. At that moment, the picture was already getting clearer. Police took a closer look at the car. Inside the passenger panel, they found a concealed hide. It was empty except for a couple of latex gloves, but its design was obvious. This was a compartment built for moving illicit items, and it told investigators O'Connor wasn't some small-time dealer. That suspicion was confirmed hours later when officers raided a flat in Amias Drive, Edgware, that was linked to him. Inside, they uncovered more cocaine, a money counting machine, and stacks of cash, £143,080 in total. Forensics suggested that around 100 kilos of cocaine had already been processed there, far beyond what was seized. But the most chilling discovery came when detectives noticed something unusual about one wall. A false panel. When they pulled it back, they found a hidden void, and inside that space sat a holdall. Unzipping it revealed a cache that could have armed a small gang, a 9mm Uzi submachine gun, a Czech-made .32 Skorpion submachine gun, a compatible silencer, and 332 rounds of ammunition, including .38 caliber bullets. Every weapon was fully functional, with magazines ready to load. This wasn't just a drugs flat. It was a stash house for weapons of war. Experts later confirmed the Uzi was capable of firing 600 rounds a minute. The Skorpion, compact but deadly, was designed for close quarters use. Together with the silencer and hundreds of rounds, these guns were a recipe for chaos had they reached the streets. O'Connor's silence in police interviews said it all. He answered no comment to every question, but the evidence was overwhelming. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts, including possessing firearms with intent to endanger life, supplying cocaine, possessing ammunition, and holding criminal property. At Harrow Crown Court, the sentence came down, 16 years and 3 months in prison. The judge didn't mince words. O'Connor wasn't a man caught up by accident. He was central to large-scale drug trafficking, laundering criminal money, and storing weapons capable of serious violence. Think about that for a moment. A Bolton man, barely 25, running drugs and guns out of a London flat with a hidden wall. Police believe 100 kilos of cocaine passed through that property. At street value, that's millions of pounds. And alongside it, 2 military-grade weapons, hundreds of rounds, and the means to enforce drug debts or settle disputes with lethal force. So how did a man like O'Connor end up here? He wasn't a kingpin. He wasn't untouchable. He was being watched handing over bags of cash in a parking lot. His flat wasn't impenetrable. His car wasn't spotless. And his rucksack wasn't hidden well enough. In fact, what undid him was the mix of arrogance and carelessness that often follows fast money. O'Connor relied on EncroChat, believing encryption would keep him safe. He stashed his arsenal behind a wall, assuming no one would find it, and he carried cocaine around in broad daylight, as if surveillance wasn't already circling him. The truth is, every layer of his operation was interconnected. The drugs funded the weapons protected the drugs, and the cash tied it all together. One weak link exposed the rest. The numbers tell their own story. £143,000 seized, a kilo of cocaine worth £36,000, evidence of 100 kilos processed, putting the turnover in the millions. 2 submachine guns, both banned under UK law, with intent to endanger life charges attached, and more than 300 rounds of ammunition, enough to fuel violence across London. In sentencing, detectives made a point. They called it another example of the inextricable link between drugs, money, and violence. That might sound like standard police talk, but when you strip it back, it's simple. Drugs generate money. Money buys guns. Guns fuel control, intimidation, and more money. Break the chain at any point, and the whole structure collapses. For O'Connor, that chain broke the moment surveillance caught him with a bag. Everything else followed. There's a lesson in his downfall. He thought he could hide, behind walls, behind encryption, behind silence in interviews. But criminal economies leave trails. Cash piles up. Drugs leave residue. False walls don't stay secret forever. And while O'Connor begins his 16-year sentence, the larger questions remain. Who supplied the guns? Who bought the kilos that moved through his flat? Who else touched the cash before it hit the money counter? Cases like this don't exist in isolation. They're threads in a wider network. Pull one, and you expose a whole tangle. In this case, that tangle stretched from Horwich in Bolton to the streets of London, where automatic weapons were waiting to surface. O'Connor might have seen himself as untouchable, but in reality, he was one more player in a chain that depends on people willing to take the risk for profit. His risk ended with a false wall pulled apart, and a sentence that will keep him locked away until his 40s. And for London, at least, 2 submachine guns and hundreds of rounds never made it out of that hidden void.